My first guides concern the importance of hauling, and how designing an efficient base often came down to minimizing the need for it entirely. But all of that was before animals were released, and they've fundamentally changed a lot about base design. Kind of. Hauling is still incredibly important. Villagers working production jobs will usually use the closest resource. If you don't have anyone hauling what they need to nearby stockpiles, they'll end up running a lot more than they need to. While it might seem like that means they trip either way to grab those iron nuggets someone mined halfway across the map, people just getting resources for a job are only going to grab what they need for one run. You turn 30 nuggets into ingots at a time, so that means they'll never grab more than 30. Meanwhile, someone hauling is going to try to fill their inventory up completely. That means that they'll take up to 60 in one trip and bring everything over in half the time. An example I've used before is that telling your builder to haul before they build will actually make them build faster. The villager on the right can bring over 60 wood at a time and then use it to build, while the villager at the left takes trips for 30 wood repeatedly. Animals work differently. Once you've trained certain kinds of animals into pets, you can assign them to help haul in the animals tab. Cows, goats, and dogs are going to be the most common pets you use for this. These animals will occasionally choose an item to haul at random, and then they'll idle around for a time after they finish that job. On shorter tracks like this, a villager hauling full-time greatly outpaces their animal companions because they work full-time while the animals take breaks. Workers aren't going to get rights for another 500 or so years. But on this much longer track on the right, the timer matters less, and the cow spends a greater portion of their time hauling. That leaves them doing almost as much work as the villager on the same long track, and just as much work as the cow on the much shorter track to the left. There are some minor differences between the different animals. Cows can haul more in one trip, but they breed a lot more slowly and they eat more food than other pets. Prior to animals being around, an efficient base was one designed around minimizing the total hauling distance because villagers' hauling efficiency is based on that. Food was best grown close to your cellar, which was itself best placed near your kitchen. Your smelting and blacksmithing were best handled near the entrance closest to an iron vein. This applied to your people too. You wanted to keep your bedrooms near great halls, shrines, and so on, so that people would move between them very easily during their leisure hours. I called all of these resource loops. All of that still holds true in the early game. You aren't going to have trained pets to help you haul, or if you do, there aren't going to be very many of them compared to the large amount of early hauling that needs to be done. That means that having a villager prioritize hauling is still incredibly useful, even if it doesn't seem like they're doing as much as your researcher or builder. Keeping things compact will make this much more efficient, and will also make you walling in your base to fight off early raids a lot easier if you're still struggling with that. You can repurpose or demolish your early buildings as you grow larger and need more space. Don't fall into the trap of having one big storage area for everything. Instead, you want to get into the habit of dividing your storage spaces into many small areas suited for where they are. Food and meals in the kitchen, wood by upcoming buildings, seeds in the fields, and so on. It's also generally good advice to give villagers a few leisure hours after waking up and keeping their bedrooms near shrines. They'll eat, play backgammon, drink booze, and pray to fill their bars early, which will drastically reduce how often they leave their work to run off for a midday break. Workers' rights are the enemies of efficiency in this game, but all of that is the same as before, so how do animals actually change base design? It's all in the mid and late game. Put simply, you no longer need to be nearly as concerned with designing your full village around people hauling because they just won't be. Animals are going to handle most of it once you've got an army of trained pet haulers, which means that you should be planning around them instead. I mentioned that animals choose how frequently to haul based on how long it's been since they last started, and not since they last finished. That means that hauling shorter distance isn't any more efficient, so you don't need a compact base, and you have nearly unlimited hauling, so you also don't need to design around resource loops by grouping production facilities that feed into each other. Note that this applies less if your base isn't being sufficiently tidied up by animals. If you still have goods laying about everywhere, and your animals are always hauling anyways, then you'll still benefit from keeping goods close to where they'll be used, since villagers will still be hauling or running to unhauled goods at times. But even with nearly infinite hauling, there are still some things you want to keep in mind if you want to lay out an efficient base. Animals might handle all of your hauling, but your villagers' time still isn't unlimited, so you want to start planning around that. Their workstations should be kept close to stockpiles that give them everything they need to work, regardless of the distance to haul it. Instead of keeping related workstations close to each other, like forges near furnaces, you can keep them separated. You can then use that extra room to give each one what it individually needs, be it ingots, fuel, nuggets, or items to break down. Your villagers are going to get more work done with their time, and what would have been a big cost in hauling will instead be handled by animals. Another great example of this is fuel. I've previously recommended keeping little tree farms near any place that needs fuel, like your smelters, cooks, building projects, and braziers, instead of having one large one near your botany area. But now that animals handle most of your hauling needs, you can just build one tree farm. This minimizes villager time spent carting saplings around a plant at the cost of using more of your animals' hauling time later on, but it's a good trade now. Overall, this gives you a lot more freedom in base design. You can stay efficient while keeping things large and open more easily, which is nice for players like myself who enjoy making pretty villages and keeping things efficient. If you want to understand more about resource loops and base design in the early game, make sure you check out my original video about base design. If you want to understand animals more, I made a comprehensive guide to them that you'll love.